I love saving money
Okay.
because sometimes you have to live paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
And it's becoming a reality for more of us than we care to admit, but it's so true.
That's true.
With more on that, let's welcome back to the program our very good friend, Jim Iuorio, host of the Future's Edge podcast and the owner of Brant's in Palatine. Good morning, Jim.
Good morning to you. Thanks for having me.
Well, Justin and I were just talking during the break about how much we miss your restaurant. And I'm debating. He says that he's a ribs guy.
You don't have to miss it.
Pardon? I know, but he's a ribs guy, and I'm a burger and a taco person. Have you tried his tacos?
I've been there.
Have you been?
Oh, yeah.
Have you tried the tacos?
I don't think I've had the tacos.
Do you still
I've
have
had
those fish tacos?
Oh, they're good. Yeah, I argue that our fish tacos are the best anywhere.
Okay, now watch it now.
I'm not kidding you.
Watch it.
I'm not like fish tacos. That sounds weird.
I love fish tacos.
Oh, they are the best.
Which fish? What kind of fish?
Well, I don't know. What
We use cod.
Okay, good old cod.
Okay, I gotta go try
But
it.
what
now.
about your burger?
So the burger it's a proprietary blend we get from Chicago Stockyards. It's always ground the night before. It's always fresh delivered. It's like this blend of deep chuck. It's a whole thing that has been mapped out over the years to get us what we think is the perfect burger. So again, and some might disagree that it's the perfect burger or not, but that's why you come in and give it a try. Don't order it any more than medium cooked.
All right.
Oh, yes.
Brant's and
That's how I like
Palatine. How is business going, by the way, in this economy?
So in the smaller restaurants are having an extremely difficult time. So our restaurant, just let's say, I'll just pick out arbitrary numbers because I don't want to go too far into the finances of it. But 2.5 years ago, if we needed to make like the first $30,000 that we made in a week was just to cover our expenses. Now that number shot up to closer to $50,000 in 2.5 years' time, and that's just before we make a penny. So we want to still be the affordable option for everyone. So we've raised prices like 20%. I'm sure you've gone to other restaurants that have raised prices closer to 35 to 40%, which is what the standard would be to have, the same amount of income. But we are willing to make this a long game thing. We're not going to raise prices and push people away. We'll just make less in the time being. But and people will think I'm saying just inflation. Inflation's about 60-70% of it, but just the different regulations, the different taxes, it is as if the government is trying to put all small businesses out of business. And again, our friend Carol Roth wrote the book, The War on Small Business, and she's going to testify in front of Congress about that. And what you're seeing is ridiculous, and it just makes you scratch your head and wonder why they're doing this.
Well, listen to this. This was somebody asked President Biden, if he was concerned about inflation while he was in Pennsylvania, and here's his answer.
He learned that paying taxes was something people who work for a living did, not him.
That's not the thing, but sorry. Well, basically, he said, inflation's been stubborn, but the fact is prices are up 19.4% under Biden, with inflation that's been on or above 3% for 36 straight months. So what are the real inflation numbers, Jim Iuorio?
So the CPI, people have to understand that the CPI has been changed twice in the last 50 years, once in the 80s, once in the 90s. And if the same methodology was used from the 80s, when we were at the height of the inflation about a year ago, it would have been coming in between 15 and 17% year over year. They changed it. I could go deep into how they changed it, but it has to do with substitution. They conveniently substitute things in when they start to get too pricey, and hedonic adjustments. Look that up, people. Just to give you like an example of it, if your car has like a rear view camera, which you don't have a choice in, and that costs $800, and you're getting that when you buy a car, they're not counting that as inflation, despite the fact that you didn't want a rear-facing camera. But there's all kinds of those things built in the CPI. But just to put it in some perspective, like just before the pandemic lockdowns, since then, chicken is up 31%, beef up 32%, gas up 36% just before in 2020, and the average salary required to buy just the medium price home has jumped almost 50% since 2020, because housing inflation is through the roof. So and again, when Joe Biden comes on and says inflation is going down, he wants people to believe that means prices are going down. No, it's still an increase that compounds yearly. So if it's 3% this year, 3.5% actually, that's on top of the probably 7% average last year.
Oh.
So it is destroying people. And by the way, it is done intentionally. And I know this is becoming a little bit of a rant, but this is something I feel pretty strongly about. It has been done intentionally. They told us for 10 years why they wanted and needed inflation. And it was kind of, to put it simply, to bail out debtor governments like the state that we live in. They can only deal with their debt by inflating our way out of it. So they did it on purpose, and the federal government is still doing it on purpose right now. We are increasing the federal debt $1 trillion every 100 days right now. We've never seen anything like this as far as deficit and debt spending. And people, they keep coming out and telling us how good the economy is. Well, then why in the heck are you spending so much money? I'm sorry. Am I going to get invited back if I go on?
No. This is great.
Oh,
I'm
please,
actually
loving
I
it.
love learning.
Okay,
I'm
good. Well,
very
they're doing it on
open-minded.
purpose. That's the takeaway. When people go to the store and they see the inflation, the government needed inflation. Now the Fed is fighting inflation, and every time the Fed keeps rates high to try to break up demand, aggregate demand, the federal government just presses the gas pedal as far as spending goes. So I think that's got to frustrate the heck out of Jay Powell, because I think he's basically a good guy. I don't feel he's competent at all, and I could spend an hour bashing the Fed for the things that they missed. But I think he's trying to do a good job. Well, at the same time, the federal government seems to not be trying to do a good job through their spending. But then you ask yourself, is inflation a killer at the election? And then you think, well, they must have a play to blame it on their opponents, to somehow it's my fault that inflation's going higher. Somehow it's the corner grocery store's fault for charging high prices. But either way, it's certainly not going to be their fault based on what we've seen in the past.
Well, that's what I keep hearing though, that they're price gouging because the greedy gas stations are taking advantage and raising the prices. I know you're laughing, but tell us why you're laughing.
I'm laughing because these businesses are holding on by the skin of their teeth. When input costs go through the roof, just consider the crude oil and gas prices that we mentioned a second ago. Those are going through the roof. That's involved in everything. Everything has to be transported. Everything has to be produced, and it takes oil. It takes all these input costs. So a corner grocery store who's trying to make ends meet, and they don't know when the next bout of 10% inflation is going to kick in too, now considering it's reaccelerating again. So every one of these smaller companies is hanging on by the skin of their teeth. I just described how the restaurant industry is, and restaurants are closing all over the place because of these same forces. The notion that, and if you ever did find a spot that companies had the luxury of price gouging, it'll take me 5 minutes to explain why the government caused that by creating hurdles and moats for these businesses and making lack of competitive. Because in competitive businesses, you can't price gouge because the place down the block will then undercut you and take all your business. So it's every problem we have is caused by government. I don't want to be this guy who's the big government basher. It's just they make it so easy.
Yeah, and Jim, my good friend Eric Bayless, I don't know if you know him, Big Onion Hospitality. He has like 1,000 million restaurants throughout.
1,000 million?
No, I'm
or
joking.
Just
He's got a ton.
It's a math term.
That's a math term.
It's a high-level math term.
But I mean, I hear this from him all the time. I've watched some of the stuff he posts, and he's just flustered. But let's talk about, I mean, when you look at, I think what was the last 11, 12 weeks, unemployment insurance has been showing the same economic factor or number. What gives with that? What is this administration doing, and what are they trying to convey by showing that the unemployment number is staying at the same number?
Well, I love that you got into the labor numbers because they are the greatest story ever told. Used to be the Easter story. Now it's the labor story in our country right now. Full-time jobs have been going down for a year. Part-time side hustles, Uber drivers and hosts at restaurants have been going through the roof. So many of these are second jobs, people trying to make ends meet, that the whole notion that our labor picture is improving is complete nonsense. If you look just under the hood for 1 second at the quality of jobs we're producing,
exactly.
Government jobs, education jobs, healthcare jobs have gone through the roof. Huge disproportionate increases over the last 2 years because they're trying to paper over the fact that our economy actually is declining, not expanding like they say. And again, I will go back to this fact. Every government economist who comes out and tells you how great an economy it is, I want someone to raise their hand and go, I got a quick question. If the economy is doing good, why is the government spending like drunken sailors? Because every Keynesian economist will tell you that in times of economic slowdown, that's when the government borrows money, increases spending to try to take the sharpest edge off the recession. Well, why are they doing it now? Out of the same side of their mouth, they're trying to tell us that the economy is expanding and everything's great, because it's not great.
It also sounds like it's an election year too.
Yeah. Could be.
Does that way to you? Because they're also talking about selling more of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which they've already sold out half of.
We're depleted.
To push gas prices down. I wonder why they'd be doing it right now in the next couple of months.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I can't believe you'd suggest it's because of an election. How dare you?
Well, are they going to fill that up? Fill it back up?
No. They're not going to fill it. They're the worst traders on the planet. What kind of trader has 300 million barrels buy, and they say, yeah, we're going to buy it as soon as it goes below 70. Well, guess what the market's going to do? They're going to defend that level.
Yeah.
The way they traded it is comical. But they're not going to fill it up anyway, because filling it up isn't – they just want to drain it to keep prices as low as they can before the election. If they are able to pull this sleight of hand and wallpaper over every pockmark in the wall before the election, I believe the hangover that's going to happen in the first quarter, second quarter of next year is going to be legendary.
Real quick before we let you go, let's talk about the housing market. I know a lot of Chicagoans want to move, but they're locked into a great mortgage rate of 2.75% or 3%. And I don't think, I mean, why would you bother selling your house?
You're not. So this is something that's going to be taught in monetary policy classes for the next 100 years. Never before have we, in a 10-month period, more than doubled mortgage rates. We took them from 3.25% to 7.5% in a 10-month period. So what they wanted to do was keep people from the demand down. They wanted to break up demand to lower the price of housing. But what they ended up doing is completely locking up the supply from the mechanism that you just described. No, people are going to hold on to their 3% mortgage like grim death instead of moving. So it changed a bunch of people's plan, and it locked up the supply, so housing prices went higher, not lower. Now couple the fact that for a 14-year period from 08 to 22, we were creating new housing at a lower than historical average pace, creating part of a supply problem too. And again, that is government regulation. The reason that builders don't build $200,000 houses in the Chicago suburbs is because the regulatory hurdles to build those are probably about $80,000 baked into that. So the only way that they can make any money is if they build the $600,000 McMansion. So the government sits back and goes, well, why isn't there just nice, small, affordable homes? Because it's their fault. Just grab a mirror, look in it, they'll know who caused it.
And they want to tax them on that. So
I
the $1
know.
million homes tax.
All right, Jim Iuorio, we're going to have to
Absolutely.
leave it there. Host of the Future's Edge podcast, and, excuse me, owner of Brant's, which we should be going live from one of these days.
Ooh.
We
Yeah.
should do a live remote.
I should do my show live.
Great.
there.
You should do your, you know what?
Yeah,
Why
on
don't
a
you two
Saturday.
chat
Yeah.
after the show sometime? And you should, on
Yeah.
a Saturday from 4 to 7.
As long as the tacos keep coming.
Oh,
Fish
yeah.
tacos.
That'll be fine.
Give them my number.
All right,
Yeah.
we'll do. Thanks, Jim, as always. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Listen to podcasts of Dan and Amy from the AM 560 mobile app. Download it today at 560theanswer.com/mobile.
You know, today, $20 barely gets you a burger and fries, and maybe it'll get you a quarter tank of gas. But you know what it'll get you, though? For just $20 a month, you get unlimited talk and text and plenty of 5G data from my friends, my cell phone company, a veteran-owned company, Pure Talk. Make the switch today, and you'll save an additional 50% off your first month. Now choose a wireless company that shares your values. Just dial pound 250, say the keyword save now, make the switch today. Pound 250, keyword save now from Pure Talk.
Getting quality employees to fill positions in your company is essential.